Into the Sorare Data Gameweek 238 strategy review. I am Andrew Laird. You can find me as Lairdino on Sorare. Joined as always on this Friday, at least morning for us. It is Sean Newsham, PSU fans 2 on Sorare. Sean, we have a few things to talk about. I wanted to talk about obviously this game week that we are currently in because it just started. We have an argument to have. I think we're going to have that argument later in the show. It actually stemmed from a long conversation we had last week in terms of U23 goalkeepers. But for everybody who's like tuning in to get that at the beginning, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait. We're going to talk about game week 238 first. But Sean, the big match of this game week and the one that was supposed to be the most likely champion Europe, but some all-star cheat code was Inter Milan. And I checked yesterday, they still had odds up. They were minus 1,000 to win. Apologies for those who don't use the American odds. But there were rumors that the match was going to get canceled because of COVID, not because of Inter Milan's COVID. You have this Inter Milan stack that we talked about last week, and we've talked about a few times. What's funny is we mentioned that if you tried to buy that stack now, it would be like 5 times more than when you bought it back in, I don't even remember when you did it, back in the summer. But anyway, did you play your Inter Milan stack this week?
I did not. I passed. I don't see that game likely happening, but I could have played it and I thought about it. And the thing is, I think it's fine to play it because they had the best matchup in all of Champion Europe. I don't think
by far.
Yeah. They were a better matchup than Bayern. They were a bigger favorite than Bayern. So I think that there was validity to play them or not play them. I had a good enough champ D4 team that if I didn't play them, it was fine because the team was still pretty solid. But I did consider playing them because if that game goes off and not having it's going to be not fun. But it seemed like that game seemed very unlikely to play, so I did not want to risk it realistically.
If there was no problem, would you have just like thrown all 5 of them into Champion Europe D4?
No,
split them.
I probably was going to split them. I probably would have split them between D3 and D4 and U23 because it would have been too good of a spot. And part of the issue with them is sometimes they rotate a little bit. Like I don't know if Lautaro was going to start this week because he started in the midweek, and last time when he started in the midweek, he did not start on the weekend. So I was a little hesitant that he was going to rotate. So I didn't really want to play him.
See the Dzeko hat trick is Lautaro's on the bench.
Well, the thing is, he could sub in and score too. So like, it's not
That's
out of true. But the part of the reason I haven't had as much success right now with my inner stack as I could have had is because the couple weeks where they went nuts, I had the one guy that rotated, whether it was like Bastoni or Lautaro or Hakan or Barella or Skriniar, like whatever week it was, like I just so happened to not get the ones that were in that week, except for the week which I won the division because they all played. But yeah, I think I would have split it up, but maybe not. It would have been a decision I would have had to go through. Like I probably would have played. Well, I might have ran D3 with only one super rare is what I might have done. So I might have ran like Handanovic.
You don't even like doing that too.
I don't. I might have done Handanovic, one of the defenders, and then run Kroos, Lewandowski, and then super rare, whether it would have been Milinkovic-Savic or one of the defenders that I had. That probably would have been my plan of action there.
Yeah. So you just have the super training team?
I did. That team should score pretty well if it plays. Like, that should be a pretty good training team if it plays, I would reckon.
Oh, man. Yeah, so that game hasn't been postponed yet. So I was looking at some of the numbers today in terms of like lineups with 5 players with matches, and that obviously still shows up. So if it plays, then obviously those who decided, I don't know, I feel like I was going to say those who decided to take the risk, but I feel like most people who have those cards probably didn't have, an easy 5. If you have a 5-player inter stack, you may not have 5 other Champion Europe cards, even like a goalie. So maybe you play them anyway, but there's a lot to be had if you have that inter stack. So I wanted to look in here. It's still working on these graphics that I like to share with you guys before I get in there. Thank you to those who have joined in on the chat. Got Misaki Nifio, nice win on that Upa super rare. That was quite a pull today. Roland, Chani, and Josh, thank you for joining us. So this first one that I have here is just kind of the prize breakdown, minimum scores and all that. And then I was talking to you before this, looking at the prizes that were won for this midweek. And I know we're trying to talk about 238, but for 237, we saw some big boy prizes in here. And what was funny to me is that people are still winning 2020/2021 cards here on January 21st, 2022, as we saw Allison and Virgil van Dijk as 2 first place prizes this week. Allison was all-star rare pro, and Van Dijk in Champion Europe rare pro. And we've got Mbappe, we've got Lewandowski, and we've got some pretty decent prizes here, and I still have no idea if the cooldown exists.
I mean, I don't think any of us can know if the cooldown exists. I was actually, Professor Techers was talking in one of the Discords I'm in yesterday about the cooldown and how it seems like it's fixed. And you and I were talking about it in another Discord. There's Techers.
There's Techers, yeah.
And everyone was talking about it because like it's better right now than what it was.
Yep.
I said, and I know that you guys did not say this, but I am going to wait and see where we are at in a month. If we are still getting this stuff in a month, then I will think that things are fixed. My hesitation and my concern is that things will just devolve. So like, for example, like this last midweek, there was very few teams playing, and the rewards were very favorable. Like you can look at I want a reward with a 0, 3 people that average like 30 and a 78. And I want a reward with that in Division 3. And obviously I like getting rewards for stuff like that. And I do think there's validity in people getting rewards for stuff like that at certain times. But if that comes at the detriment of this upcoming weekend and there not being cards with rewards of value, that's going to be a problem to me. Similarly, like if there's going to be cards like that going forward, and let's say I'm in a month and I look and the reward structure is terrible, and like my whole thing with rewards, like people have different complaints with rewards, some valid, some not valid. All I want is to understand it. I want to be able to look and be like, all right, 80% of cards this weekend are playing. I should expect this amount of rewards compared to that amount of rewards. So like for me, it doesn't matter what the system is, whether it's too many or too few cards. It's consistency and understanding. Like there's like, if the other week there was like 5 teams that played in Champion Europe, that was it, and the rewards were like huge. Well, if 40 teams are playing in Challenge or Champion Europe, I expect the prize pool to be a lot bigger than when 5 people are playing. The way I think things should be, and it should be a no-brainer in my opinion, there should be a blend of dynamic rewards and like static. So like you should have, let's say 4 or 5 tiers. So if you have 4 tiers, if there are between 0 and 25% of teams, you get this amount of rewards. If there's 25 to 50% of games, you get this amount of rewards. If there is 50 to 75, this amount, 75 to 100%, you get this amount. And you then know what you're going to get if the week has that amount of teams playing. And that's my concern. Like, for example, MLS and Asia are starting again in about a month. We're about a month out. If the rewards don't go up substantially when those start and we have every league running compared to what it was, let's say next week when there's just Europe and Europe going and that's it, that doesn't make sense to me. Like that's not logical to me. So like I just want a consistent situation that is understandable, and what we currently have is a non-consistent situation that nobody understands whatsoever. And when I say nobody, I literally mean I don't think anyone understands it.
No, I agree with that. I think there's some it's weird to like be disappointed when the cards that we saw rewarded in 237 were rewarded, but that's sort of the way that some people have to feel. Like we saw Mbappe get rewarded in this past game week, and so now we know, or we think, Mbappe won't be rewarded again for a little bit. But it was on such a small week when most of us couldn't compete anyway. I think that's ultimately the problem with putting these huge rewards in midweeks. Although then we have people who don't, if they open, they're like, all right, midweek rewards won't be as good in terms of the actual cards that are given away, not in terms of the number of cards, but the top tier. Then it's oh, well, why do I play midweeks anyway? But Techers brought up that for Challenger, and I just looked it up. The last place spot that won a reward in Challenger rare this past game week won a card with 110 points, which is just wild.
Yeah, and to be fair, I do want to say, I think that people should get rewarded for having midweek teams and having different utilities, because that's part of the game, is
sure
planning ahead, having different utilities. I know, looking back to the summer, Techers was one of the people that got punished for this, but he would look ahead for 4 weeks in advance for a weekly special, and then the weekly special would, one, either change, or two, you would have 1, 2, or 3 rewards. So who cares anyway?
Yeah.
But you should be able to get weeks where there's a random situation, you get rewards, or someone gets rewards for putting up a very mediocre score, just because they have planned and have people for that, and stuff like that. But it can't really come at a massive detriment to the weeks where there's a lot of players. The term oh, this week there was a lot of points needed to get a reward, that doesn't matter. There's going to be weeks where there's lots of points scored. There's going to be weeks where there's not lots of points scored. It's all going to depend on there are key players every single week in every division that are going to be heavily used. If you're looking at U23 D3 and Jury and Timber DNPs, I would expect the scores to be lower that week, because a lot of the Jury and Timbers are going to be played there.
Yep.
Similarly, if I'm looking at Lewandowski and I'm playing Champion Europe Rare 3 or Rare Pro, and Lewandowski has 100, I'm expecting scores to go up a little bit that week because Lewandowski had 100. And there really are signifier teams, I think, that produce that. And generally speaking, it's the top of the table teams. But you're looking at in Champ, you're looking at Liverpool and Bayern. If those teams blow up, I'd expect the scores to be relatively high there. You're looking at Ajax. If Ajax has a big game, you're expecting the scores to be higher in certain divisions. And then America, if Atletico Mineiro had big game weeks over and over again, you would just see prize scores be really high, because so many people had Mineiro stacks from when they had a big congestion where no one was playing. Everyone prepared for that and bought that. But so there's certain teams that if they have big weeks, you're going to see higher scores. And if they have bad weeks or DNPs in them, you're going to see lower scores.
I think one of the ones, it was, last weekend, 236, we saw some huge U23 scores. And it was less the big teams than just the teams that have been on the platform a lot. I remember when CDK scored, I think that was last weekend. And I don't have CDK, but I tumbled. And it's you go to the impact players and you're just oh, everybody, there's just so many CDK cards out because he's been on the platform for so long, even though he's still U23. Correct. And everybody plays them in U23 or U23 Rare Pro. So the Timber thing, they're not quite as many Timber cards as there are Noah Lang or whatever. But I don't know, we're still, you're right, on those high scoring weeks, and I feel I've mentioned this in some Discords before, but I'm guilty of this because I have it on the screen right now, the minimum scores that have been needed over the last 15 game weeks. But ultimately, we're not trying to score as many points as possible. We just have to score more than everybody else, which is what happens in this midweek. Right. If you built a lineup for a midweek to maybe score 350, but it scores 75, you're oh, you're out of luck. But if you
Oh, no, there we go. All right, I was muted. Can you guys hear me? If you can, let me know. Laird seems to have disconnected. But if you guys can hear me, I'll just keep going. Yeah, Laird definitely crashed, I think. So you're talking about... All right, good. You guys can hear me too. Oh, looks like Laird's back. Someone said, all right. So anyways, like you're talking in U23 or Challenger Europe, like right now, like Russia's gone. Russia's out. Austria's out. Like these leagues are on break. And like over the last month, we've had random breaks where like Belgium didn't play. You had a situation where the Divisi didn't play. So like all these weeks where like Challenger sort of getting broken in half is difficult because you're going to have lower scores probably in general, or you're going to have higher scores because things are going to be more condensed. So like if the Divisi's out, Russia's out, and Austria is out, well, so many people have Belgium guys, but you have no option to play anyone but Belgium guys. So like all of the Belgium guys are going to be concentrated in a certain division and in a certain situation. So there's quite a bit of validity into these things and players like that. So like the scoring just isn't going to be consistent. And some weeks you're going to need high scores, some weeks you're going to need low scores, and it's never going to be something that's like super consistent and super locked down. So you need to be prepared for that, and you need to be aware of how that's going to work. So I think that's how it's going to go. But yeah, Laird was talking about the scores and different things like that. I don't want to go into our discussion on the Thomas Hasel situation that we were talking about with Crépeau. So I'll wait till Laird comes back on that. If anyone has any questions, post some questions and I'll answer questions up this week, because I don't have the ability to share my screen, I don't think. So I can't go over any lineup stuff until Laird comes back. Looks like I have a message. Let's see if Laird's responded to me. So Niftio, how did it feel to get that Upamecano card? Because that is quite a nice situation. Oh, maybe I got cut off now. Looks like I'm cut off now. No, looks like I'm still on YouTube. Maybe I need to refresh. I still see myself on YouTube. I think Laird thinks I cut off. He did not. Can you guys still hear me? Because no one is posting in chat, so I'm assuming no one can hear me now either. Oh, I'm still good. All right, so apparently I'm good. So Laird currently thinks that I fell off. He did not. All right, so any questions anyone has, let me know. So yeah, back to the Inter Milan discussion point and whatnot. I think that there's some validity with, you have to make decisions. And if your decisions are like, okay, I cannot play an inner stack, but I have a stack where I have options that are not terrible, do you play those options? So like for me this game week, I had, let me pull up on my screen what I ran in Champ Europe. So like I had the option of running my full inner stack, and I would have paired them all together. So what I did in the midweek was the gank game looked like it was to be determined and possibly not an option. Yeah, Alejandro, for low budget